I creased the letter that I took off the Liberty Public Office shelf for people divorcing their husbands. Clear, unstained, white, fresh letters, aroma wafting off, in typical fresh print smell, salty bittering ink as the ink dried on paper, smell included, as added extra to the shelves to fully send off the letter to the officials, so I could get a full-out divorce to both my child as well as husband. I still remember that morning time, yelling in a typical recent fit, before falling on the store floor that I worked in as of date today, only get time off as the store had catched fire from an electric failure, bet the boss refuse and cheap as he could get looking for some other cheaper fixer-upper to fix what was left of the electric cords behind a heater for oil store building, so I'm here quickly grab the pen from cup, the women behind the desk subtly noticing but giving away any hints. Stating off poorly, flashing the memory into my brain as she'd stated off blankly in overall blank tone, showing at the edges of cliff, of the end of the remark, given to signing off the formatted forms when I was in action bent to the level of the desk, as she deliberation sat down in the rolling chair notice my action not rare but a conversation starting. When in gossip probably, to those wanting to mousy brown nose, scoffing as I went along the last of the paperwork I finished memory coming across my mind twice those words stated in act of revenge to given the word no, as a response to not getting candy in the store I worked as my husband was late on payment to apartment household, or house, including a part of my pay for this weekend, to buy what we need as he is overseas, working at another company he was giving help to transition to two companies to one company. I thought back on how he'd fly off the rails, throwing himself on the flooring belly first before slamming and kicking his legs, in tantrum, then rolling from his side to back while throwing the same screaming fit. I was about to grab his wrist to pick him up to scold him but then. Evils wears a mask, always. He'd cool down to Arctic ice cold, tears still rolling off his cheeks, on his fat puffy face, he'd simply, without a hint of remorse, postulate but dads let Zenobia give me candy. That ease to pronounce that name let me on to other women in the relationship, that I have been let in on the secret to, shocked my face twisted, then twitched twice, then forcefully unclenched my face but, still crinkles were still left on my face by then, everyone had turned back to what they were doing, so as quick as light, I jump into action dragging that dumb brat behind me, I rushed to my apartment then next locked him in his bedroom for the rest of that as he went along causing destruction. In his room not like there would be any object he could destroy, that could harm him but I could give any effort to stop I was done, I would hire cleaners for that room next I will remove him from my life, maybe I had fallen out of love him, a tear fall out my eye, as I clicked the many button in my fury to confront my husband, a flashback to what he'd remark after I called in that fiery argument who'd put you. Action to pass the glass darling. Into to action, with a hugely disgust to the point you tell though the scream how his face would look like, past the glass, I knew my marriage was over, the back and forth from how I started off with a simple hello, who's Zenobia, I nearly clustered all of the words together into nearly one word I stated off the words I had to get off my chest he'd replied after a pause, breathing growing more hurried, as the realization hit him, all at once, so I abruptly about to again repeat what I just stated nimbly, nearly clustering together what I had to state again barely, getting an edge in before he'd shout in a flurry of pure rage, at me by giving me little space to breath, I thought you'd understand. I thought you would give us a chance, I thought you loved us, and I thought you'd have enough strength to hold us together. I paused growing rage in chest, my cheeks felt redder than ever before, my chest was tight and super heavy, but my brain is heftier than I thought because I gave him little space to scream at me any further. Caring till the end. By positing I thought you loved me, then hung up, I was done I already knew, so I went off to cook dinner, simple, quick, easy to make meal, I open up the door sincerely, silently, as inaudibly as I could top not alert him to my presence so he could rush outside the premises past the doorway, I let settle down the bowl of mac and cheese then nimbly closed the door as also inaudibly too as I could but a squid come though but he just looked to face, then not long afterwards rolling his eyes. Between space of door, at least I feed him so that dad doesn't cheap out on the meal to wherever he's going I felt deflated, defeat, a joining in inaudible screaming buzzed throughout my head so rolling down the door, legs squatting, to sitting down. Before my legs just picked themselves up within the strength I had left inside of me for that daytime, again from the back pressed against the wooden door. Trying to not give a care. Doing what I had to do, scream into a pillow in the living room, I then heard what I expected to heard but surely didn't wanted to hear, or every again or else I lose myself surely, this why women go to mental hospitals in first place to begin with, at all, a door opening up after being locked, a man walking inside then going to a room, later after an argue that didn't happen a silenced child walked past me into outside, closing the door behind, evidently to no one's shock forgetting to lock the door behind them, so I picked myself up again, locking the door, I couldn't care less anymore, I give up on love, for meanwhile but I know what will happen next after I sighed tomorrow. I sleep on the couch furious but numb all around I just lost both to another woman, legally I wished I could keep my child but that's his child, despite me birthing him into this world. Superior women, are girl bosses of all kinds. Men own the property rights to children though, especially after fighting in war, that when they own every item, object in your house, this house will be emptied out tomorrow. I wished I hadn't married him out of all people, I could been with, but that the government forces you into marriage as a teenage straight after high school, or the second you drop out, as a woman you're forced to get married to make children or adopt out child because of the population crisis, in the country I lived in. Right now, as I laid here on the couch, overhearing movers moved out all the furniture out from under me, waking to overly obviously, evidently. Trad husband. Blank. Flattened, emptied house that I saw in my dreams occasionally when I thought back on my panther cheating flags, signing themselves into my brain creating a full so into my brain, dream occasionally. I relived in my mind as I stride from road to road, aimless but well paced out, I don't remember opening up my door to outside, but I know I locked the door so he can't get inside what typically own, that property to my first name not last name, I'll have to get used to my last changing right back to my mother's name, she died alone, surrounded by rats, a sight my stepdad never wanted me to see, so I tell myself, maybe he was getting revenge on me for being badly behaved that day, because I had been in hot car all daytime, as he went off to do whatever, I have no idea, he's now dead from drug usage, to which I'm glad to hear because deep down I know what he'd wanted me to see that day. Trauma birthed. So here I am afterwards on my couch watching TV, therapy for me, will be swing by tomorrow to check on my mental health, then to go though my feelings like pieces of papers, organizing what needs organization, but never making me feel better, time might heal but that's just a goosation of an hope, give to those grieving loved ones, or relationships by gifters trying their best to give little glitters of nothingness, exact to my husband I guess expect he took some more important than money from me, so I guess I don't know what to do now, but that's when I got a call from that official, that papers I signed into law in order to get a divorce. I sense within myself that as the call rings for just a second before I ultimately picked up the phone call, the official appeared on my TV, papers in hand noticing my house, the women on screen papers in hand simply, robotic, in dry tone stated off facts of divorce. Next when she'd nearly finished, by list off facts, she'd stated warmly that, pausing before slamming down a hammer, for just a moment, she'd glazed at me deeply, then a moment later slammed the hammer down and stated off divorce is decide, you two are divorced officially. I then heard a click off from my husband dropping call not worrying probably much as his mistress, who's probably being a worryworm, anxious about being parent or maybe not and she's really is perfect the way she really is. In her own way, God do I hate her, but she continued with me stating again coldly, dried, blank, as robotic as possible without any hint of warm passable passion reminding me of relationship with my child as well as husband as of recently before the reveal, now your appointed divorce husband will arrive within 3 days, I danced back to paperwork clearly being new to this job she continued shortly after her stated remark. You and your husband will have separated therapy including also having therapy with each other, resetting, by restacking her papers quickly, afterwards by a short second she'd, again continue with, you will have 9 months to decide your destination indecision, then she'd slammed her hammer down, then the call ended, I was already so done with everything in my life how will I deal with another guy in my life after the harm that has been inflicted onto me, I'm so done already, I remark. To myself, I'm so tired of everything, I stated to myself, I thought to myself guess I'll die inside, then I decide to sleep off the day, because I lack sleep from how much work I was doing recently, which didn't feel refreshing at all. I wake up from peaceful, slumber call from my boss telling me work wouldn't be open till a week later. Chapter 1. An ease into transiting. I called back stating already, I just heard a shuffle of cloth in shrug audible heard, later he'd vocalized yeah I don't know what to do, Then I heard a near argument with debt collector possible, or some other type of argue, but now my gut is to be trust from here on out, till now to future. Anyhow he'd ended with in conversation. I was going to reply yup, but then he'd hung up right just before I could reptile in response. I adjust from laying down on my side sitting down, both legs on floor, hands on my knee, grimace paste on my face ready for the call that'll happen in 2 minutes. I guess I have to thank my boss for giving me a waking call, that when call flashed into frame, therapists on screen eyeing in her view. So she'd started how are reacting to the news of husband's departure. I simply reptile within from frame of mind, as well as I could. Therapists remarked calmly within some unknown source of given human warmth no dried, blank, tone in sight, that's okay, scratching her head with pen pushy part backside. She consequently thus carrying on, the conversation have seen him recently yet, had him visit over at all, 2 questions at once. I glance up into her eyes, I denounced no, maintaining the seriously tone but I'd add to emotion politics, uttering out a continuation of I haven't yet, not giving me an eyebrow raise, turning her head down to paper, scribbling in a list marker, or writing a check mark onto paper, to mark off the question asked. Next she'd assured are you clear? I chimed in, simply, yes, agreeing all right, that's fine, a reminder of my forced marriage to him, 2 born to be forcibly wedded to him, both unknowingly, but the resulting example is just a reminder to not have kids, until you love the person for sure. Not having the kids to love the other in relationship, that you are with till life and death or till ultimately to divorce, or having kids because you are ultimately already in a relationship with the person, already, like I did. Now I'm here already, right now as I sit here on my couch talking to therapist wading into the waters of another forced marriage, because the law says I have to, even if I don't want to at all, because of the low population of course. She flipped though her papers, introducing another, same paper list question of are with anyone else, gazing this time deeply into my eyes. I crossed my legs in discomfort, alongside my arms, twisting away while blurting out, no. Adding of course, placing my palm onto my chin, still twisted up posture, assuring, that makes sense, advising next for you stay, truth okay, she'd declared unlike the last person, clearly hurting her legs cross, well again she'd scratch her hair with the pushy part of her pen remarking but you seem truthful. I could tell she'd had already gauged my likelihood to lied, manipulated, likewise cheated the system I was born into, that was so suffocating to begin with in first place. Putting pen down for a moment she next quickly listed off a bunch of questions on questionnaire. I didn't know if this was a trick or not but still, I answered to best of my ability to her speed. I guess the meeting was nearly over 2 times ending and she realized probably, would have to fill the entire sheet next, again if I didn't answer the same way tomorrow, which she'd have to already, but not filling out the entire sheet meant she'd have seen me again in same day, so I bet she really did want that at all, bet she really had a full day of work, so I went along to be fair, obviously, as anyone would do, to saving someone the trouble of course, telling her. Have you any affair in your previous relationships? Have ever loved any else to same degree outside your relationship with your ex-husband? Have you attempted to have any other form of illegal relationship types outside your relationship with your husband? Have ever feel like you just wanted to be alone, with just yourself in the relationship? Finally after a few no's given as answer, uncrossing her legs then falling a bit into back of her chair, clearly nearly done with her list, she'd inquired another answer of how much do you hate your husband right now? I paused thinking to myself, stating well ma'am I've had a lot happen in my life, so. I paused again thinking myself for a moment, clicking her tongue against her teeth, she'd reptile within ethics, I'll give you a moment, clarity to not stating I don't have all day, so knowing how she'll react I replied with a blurt out of I have a restraining order on me from bunch of people assuming I did a crime, I didn't do. She'd interrupted me by remarking, I've already heard about by your paperwork, adjusting her glasses she'd causally venture to said, I know all my clients' histories already, I though to myself that's why she, stated that you seem truthful though, remarking to me, did you hate him before? Again I bluntly stated no again, she stretching on my TV screen, finally mumbling to herself, work finished, next she'd bid me goodbye within a simple, rushed, to get to the next person she has to get to next, see you tomorrow okay, about to try giving a similar goodbye, as the words left my mouth a clicked off, sound off happened and again I was left alone to my lonesome on that couch, again alone, but I didn't at all sense inside myself alone, I felt whole again, but also in pieces. Ripped apart in chunks. Finding myself again. In but pulled pork on mac cheese, is good, but you can just eat the pulled pork alone by the pulled pork save. The pork will still taste really good beside the sauce, no matter what's placed. Just similar to me beside myself with aim to seek out attempt to understand the venture of my sense of self to these emotions I felt before betrayal, grief, guilt, finally forgetfulness till remembrance next seething within myself in rage. Now I'm just striving to not forget with great, huge effort, what I've known I'd felt inside my own head, but now nothing, nimbly strike throughout my head from daytime breaking from a slumber, lighting hit my head now nothing just like a medical electric shocked. So I did what I've had to so far from what my stepfather had done to me before I cut him off in college, 15 years ago. That's when I met the guy that was only nice to me, out of all people, the oddball, that's cold, distant, reactionary, emotional, borderline crazy in some uncomfortable medically mental way. In a way everyone was uncomfortable with me, because they didn't know when I would snap. I guess I know why with my husband now. That's probably why everyone avoided the topic of husband with me, not that had much to said about as I was still learning about to that degrade up until that point. I guess now I'm relearning him all over again, but at a distant, in far off distant land. I'll never know the origin of ever, but still my child is there. Sometime I remember his toothy smiles, then I remember his blank, deadpan of tone confession to purely hurt me, and the loves just falls right out of me, then her falls out of me too, disappearing into the carpet. That'll be I plan to renovate in the end. That's when I foamed in seething hate, reliving every second, word slipped out of that tiny miniature version of that half-wit, prick that made me fall into pieces in the end. Now that felt myself foamed at the lips, hands balling up into fists, bent at waist, eyes dripping with tears, in such furious rage just alone to myself. Then nothing at all finally, after I just went numb, head fuzzing, sparking in such emotions. Maybe I am that broken. I just can't handle these feelings, or maybe I'm forcing myself to not sense within myself these types of emotional humanizing, alien to me, an abused child grown all the way up, now facing the sun, after being turned away for so long. Hatred is no longer felt. Austin, joke to myself, I think I needed to go out of state therapy to local therapy, but I know I wouldn't be getting that anytime soon as I have to go though government issued mandated therapy from the country government, so now my life will suffer for now. Till then I'll just do what I've done beforehand, till I manage to fake it till make it, even throughout the next direct hop-off relationship I've been forced into soon from now. Cult of mankind. Getting up, strolled on over to get to the sink, grabbing a sponge, next the soap bottle, mixing the water soap together, to risen off the dishes needed to be risen before being arranged in the location of the dishwasher, the others get fully washed, then dried though dish towel, faltering around without any bounce, from sink to pacing around with an active vacuum to clean up the carpet, thus I ended up clean up the hard flooring by vacuum, again, hence within both areas I again with liquids. Vacuum next, then I dusted, which I've never done, but I'll need new furniture if my new husband doesn't get new furniture, but I'll waited. I'm glad I got that couch. The father's side. The couch is from my estranged from life to me, biological grandma. From my mother's side, I haven't had any object from my biological dad's side, or even stepdad, because he'd steal every object, item straight off the shelves, even stealing off the dust to see if the appliances, or maybe even steal the dust of the shelves to sell the dust to some very much weirdo person with some sort of new to hoard dust and dirt inside their household, maybe beside other people, but from what I've heard from grandma, she's an antisocial, sociopathic, cat abuse hoarder. From what I tried to remember from what my mother told me, that when she was still breathing in non-chronic, near overdosing state, or frame of mind, loose marbles are traits in my family's history apparently, not that have much care to give from what I've already given already, since my birth, realization of both normal vs weird, to vs the awful. That I realized at super young age. Even then I haven't given much care from my raising parenting style of my stepfather, or an attempt at parenting that he tried to set aside most of the time, or even all the time if he really didn't count most of the typical narc traits that he did in his past till I cut him off. May God have mercy when he dies, even on my grandma too, from her only disgust, past but the bitter, mauling emotional fury when I asked about grandma made me realize how horrible grandma may have been, but still that near empty, extra closet company, garage, that I found forgot, dirty, that when I clean up turned into a beautifully oval, cushioned, scarlet, cartoony furniture piece that I added within my own household budget in college just at age 18, I'd cleaned profession, later not too long after the profession brought cleaning. That my husband complained of cost despite, all of cost came out of my budget. I added slides into the near pockets, sides, from how soft, stretchy the couch was till even now, with covering the right side tucked into said pockets stretched out space, with the Lumafur, fuzzy Rosso Corsa red Hawaiian bubbly outlines of flowers, cartoon pattern in international orange, surrounded again in outer outline in yellow orange color, printed pattern stitched into fuzzy of the cover blanket, tucked into right side of the couch, that blanket I brought to as an added onto once dirty couch. That my husband complained was still dirty, even though the couch does have an aroma of smoke still, or even a speck of dirt still left on the soft fuzzy stretchy, scarlet colored couch. That couch had been left in the estate of my mother, but she never grabbed up or even known of the couch, but sale came up, but bills were paid up by auto-issued government jail time, when my stepdad had went to jail again for tax fraud, plus not so surprising drug dealing too. That's when I discovered the couch, paid for by my stepdad, in the company closet that hadn't been stolen or sold at all. That's when I took the couch for basically free, except for a fee of entry as additionally access to the company, extra, closet, plus carry out. Because my car at the time was too tiny to carry out the couch, and still my new car, is the same too to very dad, so I'm glad I brought my own household, within my own budget. Item keepsakes. I'm glad I didn't let my husband take my husband or paid a single bill, or else, he'd might own my own house, and take away my rights to the house that I'd mostly paid for throughout my life, until now, as I got a finally, I paid for after being placed by mailman, in slot to my door as I cleaned, so filling out the final bill, I got up, feet stepping onto the ground, at the moment I stretched, one arm wrapped over the outstretched above my head, sent a bit backward, as I leaned back, thus. Soon after I went side to side, right then left, at an instant I flopped my arms at my sides, bounce a bit off my body, I'd again henceforth, faltering a bit, but still take an equivalent hike in exercise. Going back to vacuum up the liquids from carpet, next I did the only two pieces of furniture, blanket and couch. Soon afterwards I'd arranged at the bottom of the washing machine, locating the pods I brought well out to fill out my divorce paperwork to get a divorce, including other essentials too. Throwing away great art, throwing away great paper eventually. That would include paper plates, as my new husband might want to keep his own dishes so he doesn't have to get rid of his potentially ancestral, hand-me-downs, family heirlooms, but whom I know nothing of him yet, so I wished he'll just keep his distant for long wait, maybe forever, to a point where we are just roommates forever. Even so I want hope, but I just know that my hope will be crushed into dust, so I don't for right now till then, just maybe, a bit hope can hurt, just feeling for once in my life to enjoy aside from just false happiness, at work that would enjoy my home too. Sometimes, if my husband was in mood for a wait, even just second, I could turn on the false happiness, even so I know that's not good or great at all, and I really need help working on that too. Once I finished up the work to household, by washing up the bathtub, consequently to the toilet, and afterwards I'd washed the rest of clothes, including drying them off in the dryer too. Well, in meanwhile of that, I fold clothes, later putting them all away in corner of, now my room, which I then decide next to go off, after getting my sheets cleaned up by washing plus dryer machine. That pile would grow from that cycling all needed to be washed objects, items, that needed washing, then dryer, to reorganize my stuff before realization that I'd had nothing else to do, so I went off for a walk around the block, for a breath of fresh air. Afterwards I sat down on that scarlet couch, to watch mind-numbing, trashy TV, while being on my phone. Scrolling throughout a pictures apps that also had very shorts by seconds videos too, but I focus on pictures to save though to myself being in my imagination, thinking about barely nothing but focus on what I'll know be next on TV, on what will happen next on the TV show. TV mind control. Till the washing machine went off, putting my feet onto ground again I amble over to washer, putting the wet cloth into the dryer. Later I went off to couch again to sit for another hour, putting away into the corner my clothes, organized but sitting on an empty, gaping space of blandness, just like white bread beautiful in a package but the flavor of the bread is very much bland, just alike to my home, but I remain to myself, not feeling any emotion but hopefully hope, I think I sense, within myself hopefully, well alone I hope to myself, but I've not no hope, expected for tests, hope for good husband, but all hope I've had has either been partially crushed into dust or fully crushed into dust. But still I'm trying. Isn't that a good in general action to do for once and nobody else for once? Changed for the better is always good, right? Hope to be crushed into dust. Anyhow, at least I know what I wanted for now, so I can ultimately distract myself. House clean, a little relieved from that, but also empty still. That's when the time happened, my bedtime. So curling up on the couch, I went to bed after turning off the TV, that soon will be taken tomorrow. My new TV will be the replacement for tomorrow, so I'll be good and ended. Hearing again movers come in again, quickly, the gone in wind. Within 2 minutes, I wake to an empty wall of freshly painted color. Showing still the original colors, not blanched from the sun yet. Getting up onto my feet to set up my new TV. My husband will already tomorrow, I thought myself sarcastically. I can't wait for my new replacement husband to arrive tomorrow. So grabbing out a plastic bag next to the couch, a mirror to brush my hair, going over to bathroom, I sat down, in propped up location to be tilted upwards at me, so I didn't have hold the mirror in my hand. I then brushing up the sides of hair to next I grabbing my hand wrapping around all the strands of my hair into a ponytail, gazing into mirror before to my utter automobile surprise, jumping up for second, leaning back as what gaze upon, to my gasping, blurting out, what the, cutting myself off, expecting a child to still be overhearing what I'd be stating to myself before realization hit me. I repeat again, but just didn't he have angry to stated the rest again, grasping the marble counter, I gaze upon the tattoo. Skinner the Fisher, in fishnet stocking. Birthmark, or cancer, I have no clue, not a single clue to what this was, on me. Baffled, enraged, I called up the moving company, but they showed me the fact that they checked up on the carry supplies on all their employees. But still, what is this? I repeated out loud. I just got a shrug by the women on phone, so I just gave up. Then the tat glittering, then sparkled, when I wondered about my new husband and if he'd paid someone to do this, cause of what I'd heard on the news recently. From what I'm going to research to expected from new husband. Then again I wondered again about my new husband's intention, again glittering then sparkling in mirror. I again wondered if my new husband, pausing again, glittering, next again sparkling. I was in uttering out loud, ah, shocked I sated new husband, 3 different tones, recoiling in horror. Finally, I realized that this does have some deal with my new husband. Sparkling in absolute joy. Disgust fill my gut, I felt gross out, I wanted to cut off the skin in that area. Like right now, I've never really wanted tattoos. My ex-husband had that opinion too. My only friend has that research, but still the same opinion of no tats. Never wanting a random tattoo. I went to doctor, in the Quixie emergency room. From hopping into the car, waiting the tattoo or birthmark explode or quickly turned into cancer, I went straight into ER Quixie hospital, sitting down for a couple really slow, as a snail, moments to get seen. The doctor, who took a look, striding right in from current, he pulled back then back into place, taking a look, as if grazed the skin. Horror crossed his face, stating the texture was odd. Apparently I grew a huge amount of new skin overnight, which he believed, making me rushed over via scouting to nurse to guide me over to the x-ray machine, which after being printed out after the result happened to be printed on printer paper, they just freak out, pointing out the tattoos going into my bones. After handing me paper that had the x-ray printed out, I was so shocked, I blurted out quickly, nearly meshing all my words together, into one giant word, what next? I began to panic, my vision blurred for just a second. The doctor laid me onto a bench, both glancing at each other, remarking to each and other, well, what next? The other doctor stated, she's screw. Then another stated, afar from the desk, yes, she's screw, before clearly crossing his arms, then tapping his foot a bit, probably in panic for giving the bad news. No matter how much chemo or surgery, she's basically dead, repeating what the doctor was stating to me, the x-ray doctor. Reptile back to finally a date, you have 2 days to live. I then thought about this recent news being stated to me, this had anything to do with my ex-husband or new husband, to which the tattoo cancer sparkled, then glitter next, making the 2 doctors jump back. Chapter 2 Bubbly cleaning water to risen away, all my past life. The gross out second sense. Expecting an exposition, but nothing but few secs of glittering hitting the flooring, so gathering up the specks of glitters, the 3rd doctor in the conversation gathering up into a bag the specks of glitter, telling me to stay here for a day, buzzing again, vision buzzing, I've laid down again, Waiting in hospital was the worst, then being admitted into hospital, doctors coming out of the woodwork to make me go through every test they could think, before getting out of the hospital in the morning time being told, they don't know what to do about the tattoo, but what I have is probably something, fancy word for magic tattoo, that sparkles when thinking of your husband, gathering myself up to get outside the hospital doors. I'm not ready for having this oddity on my for the rest of my lifetime on this earth. I just got ready for that reality already, amble in appearance outside the doors but inside trudging past the hospital doors, ending up in my car, next home, kind of distant but focusing on the road helped me for a wait till, I ended up home, to my new husband, opening up the door to my home, to the living room, seeing a bunch of plated food, relaxing TV music, and him, with the same birth. The telegraphic liar test. Tattoo on his eyeball, the same rectangle with 3 small fading into each other including the 2 outside colors, inside the rectangle partially stripes, of colors of, dark chocolate on the bottom, faded, top color was antique brass, bottom strip was cocoa brown, to sugar brown, finally bronze brown strip fade, all colors mentioned were browns, with on opposite sides, near at the edges of the rectangle, of 2 circles both different colors, of bottom liver brown bottom, top liver brown, all shades were brown that contrasted with my pale, redhead skin. That was just sitting there, on the skin, looking like he was in very hyper state of, crazed borderline mentally ill, happiness, twisted was his knotted up smirk, was this from the birthmark, he began hopping up from my scarlet couch, into yippee, hyper, super angerized, inhuman almost, golden retriever behavior, barking at me. Where were you, how was your day, were you really in hospital already, you do realize what time it is already, do you want a plate of food, I scowl yes to. Last question, not in mood, head buzzing. I asked about his tattoo, he'd replied with a shocking casually remark off, that loves before meeting mark, he turned to then continuing, or just a lover mark. I'd scoff before stating you haven't realized that might be cancer, he'd excitedly bark, yeah, pulling out a picture from his pocket, he'd shock me couples with this marks, happy as coms, I remark, sarcastically any way to remove these marks, he'd just turned to me, gazing deeply into pure shock, not gasping but the emotion was very much evident, shaking his head, he was about to reptile with the some words but at that point I'd already hopped into the shoulder, knowing he was going to give up conversation. He'd started with me out of all people, why me, though for a second before going to washing my hair in my bathroom shower before. And happy afternoon. Once the rain running down upon my body, I guess to which finally washed myself in shower was super relaxing to my soul and I could tell definitely, as I was super dirty from not getting a shower in yesterday from surprise birthing, appearance of the birthmark, tattoo, lover mark I guess I'll call that harsh horrible secret, I'm going to have keep from my friend as to not upset her or even, unsettle her, or that's the end of our relationship, God, I'm already so done with this lover mark, tattoo, thing already. I'd heard a scoff in response outside the shower confused, I'd thought to myself at least he couldn't be in my thoughts, again I'd hear a scoff, I reptile with if you wanted to talk to me then face me directly. I then heard a laugh, next I hear a knocking on the door, not too long soon after a question of can you hear me? I state yes. Why would I be able to hear you? I glare at the closed door, he'd responded with, us love marks are able to telepathically heard each other's thought, I groan God, putting my hands on face continuing with, really, I audible hear and nodded back, scoffing, get out then, he said in a bitter tone of well of course I can't control my telepathy with you yet, I scoffed again well you can, you've been practicing this all your life, just waiting in response for a oh yeah you're right. So I can lock him outside the house when I get the chance he'd, just facepalm audible again, I then hear I can't believe this, I reptile with yeah you can't, he then shooted, yeah, in a super, ultra bittering tone. That just destroyed the blank, dried in sanctioned sanitary of my home, so told him, just don't get heat with what's going on in my head, in response, in the heat of the moment he'd yelled out loud. Perfume stinks and has an aroma. So I should just stuff down my emotions, just afterwards he'd scoffed before stomping to the couch, I then thought to myself, damn right, he'd screamed I can still hear you, I'll just ignore him for now till he loses interest, which I directly thought afterwards, not too long afterwards I heard sobbing, great same, I thought to myself in shower, as I went along my shower routine in that 30 minutes, risening up, later drying off, via a towel, including heated air pressure, clothing. Myself, grasping the door's handle, opening the door, next walking outside, in stride not confident but knowing a fight will happen soon, if not, then I've won the fight, but still either way this my life. That's the partner I'm fighting with for rest of my lifetime on this earth as far as a divorce is planned too. Sitting on my couch waiting, I could tell based on the paused by remote to the new TV he'd put in for me, I'm guess so I'd sighed, in anticipation. Rolling his eyes again he quickly remarked to me. In a statement of we needed to figure this out, wheels, spinning faster than expected I blurred out a thought it's same between both of us, are situated, putting my hand on my chest, as an indicator to what I thought the same with a gasp or sigh, or just an audible sound of some kind. He was thinking to what I thought, in the first place to begin with, but no, you can take the guest bedroom, I'll take main room, since I dash, pausing his eyes were as wide as can be, wider than I've seen on any human being before, not mention tears were filling them too, lip quivering he'd screamed, but you're my panther, Prohl's eyes sarcastically eyed, same but not internally, whipping his tears with backs of his palms, backbone scrunched. His head pointed to flooring, he'd spoke up after mumbling out a how can I get you to like me, like your precious husband, generally, generic. Hate is a strong word, horror is better one. I'd informed him, I didn't like or even love my precious panther, crossing my arms turning head to the side a bit including my adjoining eyes, I continued with, we were just roommates to begin, shrugging my shoulder well stating, till the end too, I bent over the coffee table, arranged in front of couch 2, grasped his shoulder asking him, you get that? He just sniffled I repeated myself again, after that I just reptile with well standing up straight, again, that's already. Walking to other side of the couch, to sit down well stating, you will eventually, sniffling he turned to me still scrunched over a lot with his spine, asking why aren't you trying to figure this out, seeing my blank expression. He'd screamed the rest, at all, tch I response turning to the TV again, seeing what on TV, I turned on show, grabbing out of my hands just as I pressed play on the TV. Screaming hey, barely able to the rest out, but still accessible to the ear, he'd shouted out loud, hey I'm over here, voice beginning to break down a bit he bitterly began again, I'm over here, pausing to assert if I've heard him yet he'd again, said singly this time by screaming again, hey he'd ended his sentence, he then supercilious, yell, we're supposed to love each other, crossing my arms, thinking futile was the situation, salient was to calm down the situation, without rescinding at all, not knowing if he was prone to violence of any kind, basing on the fact he'd taken away my remote, straight out of my hands, I'm guessing he is as far as I'm aware, so naturally not wanting to get into a first fight I'd equivocal and open-ended, answer of I see many people, he'd naturally filled in blanks of I'm tired out so I wanted peace right now, he'd nearly mumbled but still uttering, out loud to me, okay fine. Turning away from before, informing, my mom tell me, going to bed anger is fine, because you'll just get more anger as you get more tired, as the hours passed by, barely hearing the rest of the sentence as the TV played a murder mystery, judging his every movement, always noticing, staying vigilant just in case, aware but staying still as well as very much calm, still though keeping to myself as well too so he, my new husband doesn't have any words to hang off of in any way, at all, any time, especially so he can't fight me out of all people, because I'm the closest to him, passing the time that daytime, for a couple hours, next he'd gotten up, I then heard the vacuum start, twice did he'd made his rounds, afterwards he'd dusted, cleaned up the sink after washing, risining, putting away the dishes into the cabinets in the kitchen, in the next room, taking none for queen. As I watched TV in the living room, sat down on the couch, legs crossed up on the couch, arms on my legs, holding my knees up, pose on the couch, head turned to the TV as I watched the show, then about to get to eat I heard a plate hit the coffee table right in front of the couch, as he'd sat down the couch, turning to I simply stated, thank you for the plate, before grabbing the fork he'd also plates, so I could eat the food, plated on the crockery sat in front of me, nibbling at the food. Watching him eat the same food, so really digging into as I really watched in detail next I digged into food, after making for, by taste, texture I wasn't tasting any sense or poisoned in any sense, so finishing my food on my plate. Getting up then stretching, so as I stretched about to grab my plate to put away the crockery. We'd ate on for a while, So plopping right back down, on my couch, grabbing off the couch's cushion, putting on another show, another Munder mystery, that I put on the TV after going around the app selection, selecting the show, ending up watching the TV show after he'd put away the crockery, after cleaning up the kitchen finally. Afterwards plodding back onto the couch, in order to watch the TV, showing the show, as the show played, each scene, set passing by, as the characters reacted on recording what has been, recorded years to recent, as we watched, hours passed by just like each scene set up, in the show, finally hours had passed, so turning to me smirking asking me a question of, will you going to bed soon, stating back a blunt response of no, crossing my arms tilting my head upwards, nose pointed upwards, I responded more, with not with you, tilting my head back down, to gaze into his eyes in a near empathetic response, not yet, I gave him, turning away while getting up, looking distance, I scoffed in response to his reaction. Gobsmacked at his reaction, he should already know where we are going in this relationship. Chapter 3, Happy Calm, Clam Chowder. Sleeping like noble when I was a king. Curious I went to guest's bedroom, there was a bed there so, finally getting to sleep on bed, my back really much thanked me including my neck and knee, for the first time nearly I felt near full rest but still whirlwind in the head. Sliding off the bed while raising up my back, but joining my head alongside, my knees bending to the flooring, setting both feet to my flooring, getting up straight, stretching, later going to amble right to kitchen to drink coffee for that morning I saw my husband already with two, kitchen already cleaned up, dishes put away back into the cabinets, arms crossed, spine bent slightly, his head was facing me alongside his body, as he tapped his toe tapping, audibly on the flooring other foot. Planted onto the ground, chirping, I made you coffee, mumbling nearly, yeah you did, grabbing off the countertops, drinking the coffee, after glancing at his coffee mug seeing him, take a sip in front of me, slurping up the drink, I took a sip. Soon after I drank the entire drink of raspberry, mousse, cheesecake, matcha because that's my favorite drink, asking how'd he'd known, he'd giggled, when he abate my sense of self-worth being, from self-causation, near ready to grab his shirt, seeing him vilify himself, in his, first thought to me sarcastically, but not when, grinned, mind connection. Nearly jumping out of skin with fleeting fear, while juggling my drink which I nearly dropped from one hand to other, slamming my non-chatterable coffee mug on the countertops, screeching at the top of my lungs, nearly losing my voice in for out second, get out of my head, jumping back, to stand up straight, hand flying up to be posed up, hand in front of him about to throw hands if I get even more enraged, in typical defective reactive, responsive, reaction, I scoffed, stating to him, just stay out, crossing my arms, dropping his arms back down to his sides but not, dropping his grudge, turning his head to the window he'd informed me that, I might get a grudge against you, eyes turning to me while continuing, if you don't let be. I'd scoff immediately in response, coughing out, choking on my laughter, nearly, I'd honest to God, expect me, crossing my arms while turning, my head to the window while stating the rest. To be your practice toy, I nearly splutter out nearly, stammering at the end with laughter again, quivering with rage, he'd stamped out to living room to presumably watch TV, grabbing the remote, as I watched by, turning on the TV, he'd began watching a cartoon on TV, take his coffee, over to him in living room, setting the cup on coffee table in front of my couch, he'd shot me a glance of anger, crossing his arms, then giving a statement of, I don't want my coffee, about to get up by. Pushing himself up to the edge of the couch, I'd wandered away, back to my room to change, thinking to myself, I'll get myself some groceries, after going to my favorite coffee shop, then I'll gather up arrangements for our eventually wedding. I'd sighed well thinking about that, our wedding, absolutely fertile, will be our relationship, but the government wants children, so here we go about making a relationship out of what we have right now, God our relationship is already a grossed out film of sorts. Distance equals evil, closest is just a theory. I thought to myself, causing my new husband to let a series of scoffs, in response, growing distance to his discomforts already, I'd got dressed, simply but I was going out so, I dressed up a bit, shocking him as I passed right by, going through the door, about to get into my car, he'd screamed out loud, for everyone in neighborhood to hear, I hate you. Slamming the door to the front entrances to my house, I'd scoffed, A few people glazed into his general direction but didn't think much about what he'd said, but the slammed leaving my older neighbor with an eyebrow raise of sort, with mumbling to herself of, what the, sipping on her coffee then, continuing, in the world, she'd ended her sentence. I just waved as a response to her bafflement, to clear up the situation a bit for her, but still as I wheeled out the drive, as sipped on her coffee, she'd also glared, as I went along my drive past her, and then out her viewing vision. Happy times, happy reels to watched in childhood. Going up to counter, seeing the women piercing in her, dye hair, general out there, tree-hugging cool nature, I naturally expected her to be one that day, that I'd ordered from, but instead she turned around to fill out some coffee in mug. Black coffee to be specific, so getting my order from this frenetic, formative gut, I'd ordered from, jet black hair, hollowed out, ghostly gray blue eyes, acid burn, intense but halfway light freckles, on his face, tan skin, whose eyes crinkled up into crow's lines wrinkles, when squirting his eyes, by trying to really think or focus, lovey was his facial expressions, other words he's just average, trying to not think that he's my type of panther. I ordered from him, I'd like a chocolate croissant. Please, glancing up from just above his eyes, to give a look before remarking, that's different huh? Sighing I relatively reluctantly stated back, yeah, while playing with one of my hair stands and tilting my head sideways, again continuing with, a final you're right, as if expecting that in response, bending over the counter, well about to cross his arms halfway, but ending up putting his right palm on the right side of his face, well tilting his head to the right side, well left arm crossed over, palm on right side on the face, arm, sarcastically or flirtatiously I couldn't tell for a second. So tilted, my head to other side while grabbing my chin, in confusion, suggested in a reveal of, that's it, blurting out a confession of, yeah, cupping both hands together, and next affirming, my husband made me coffee, eyes jumping wide. Before sliding right back like a machine into usually arrangement, ensuing a response from of, you okay? Simply asking in chill tone, that was so relaxed alongside generally smooth, of can I join you at, your table, after my shift, winking at me just afterwards, admitting a simple answer back of, yeah. Soon later I began again playing with the same strand of hair, blushing a bit, slightly, just barely, standing there in relative shock. The other women glared at him. A few scoffs had happened throughout our conversation, but still maybe I could just sit with him as a friend, just maybe. Chapter 4, Finding Air-Breathing Fishes to Put in Bird Cages for Misery. Looking back to just see. Ending up later after a couple minutes, I got my chocolate croissant, the lady handing the plat, tipped her in embarrassment, realizing as no lingering shock, was left in my system, shocking but the lady with same lift up of eyebrows and eyelids, including sliding back into place, scoffing an answer of yeah, feeling bad for the rest of them, but sure enough he'd, sat down upon the chair, next to us my friend chirping some random topic, I couldn't care much to, response much to at all, brushing. Again, doing the same pose as he did at the counter, my friend chirped at me, is he your crush from college? Realizing who he was, my blush faded, right back my usually skin tone, tilting my head I gestured at him. By nearly shrugging by asking, after stating sorry, I don't know where my matters are, crossing my arms and looking just above my eyelids, as I tilted my head downwards. Oddly asking him, who are you? Turning to the window, next the counter, well in muttering a simple answer of yeah, but then continuing as I was about to get up, uttering out his mouth but people changed, being up on my feet, friend dancing glances back at me then him, then me, back and forth, declaring to me, I've changed though, in blunt, cool tone, but all-round chill tone still, nearly rolling on over the table, on his left shoulder side, I sat back down, grabbing my forehead, muttering to myself, almost, how? Listing of a shocking list from, getting divorced to being single, about to get up in response to where I thought, this was going, in the end, next listing off the facts of exercising, muscular buckling, therapy and dating around. Getting seriously jealous at his situation of being single, and looking around, I'd crossed both legs adjoining my legs, in response, cringing face by mouth pressing to my face's side in disgust. Ending up suggesting to him, by stating, well as far I know, despite my husband, turning my head then opening my eyes in sorrowful expression of sorts, continuing with, I am single, scoffing yeah you hate him, bouncing his head upwards, well stating after a pause of, yeah, sighing yeah, finally giving him answered back to his expected question, my friend being suspiciously playful to others in the cafe, by being very suggestive in her keep chirping about how cute we were and suggesting a poly relationship with my husband, muttering a simple finally going to answer her, with her chirping, being hyper annoying of yeah couple, after she'd remark of cupping her hands together. Before enclosing both hands together on the left side of her face, well cooing, then stating, what cute couple, slapping her hands on the table nearly shaking table but, catching our attention. By asking, are you together, repeating herself again while doing the same pose, I tripled back, well cringing to myself, including him of, well, answering for me, yeah we are, shocked wanting to be mad but sighing, he then asked is that a no, sighing again, rubbing my forehead, about to ask if I had a headache, I disclosed, yeah, tilting his head, and squirting his eyes upwards, looking a bit annoyed about to ask again, yeah what? I stated nearly the same remark of yeah, we are, putting my hands on the table, crossing my right arms over my body, well my arms still staying on the table, when grabbing my hand, asking, you wanted to go back to my place, turning to my friend who'd looked chipper as ever, humming well having her hands on both her sides of her face, well slowly bobbing her head from left to right sides, sighing again thinking to myself, so childish, you are as my friend, but still I need a backup, taking my car to his house, we'd rolled into his driveway. And goldfish's intelligence to a person's ego, equivalent. Stepping up his stairs to his house, grabbing the knob to the door, twisting the knob to get inside, then stepping inside, the place was relatively empty, similar to his eyes, is what I'd expected but the place was a 60s, gangster, rich man's, interior, thinking to myself great he has this style, awing doing same pose as the cafe again my friend continued in her compliment, your house is pretty, I muttered to myself too almost, but more hushed, yeah you sincerely do, grabbing my shoulder, shocking my in reflexes, and naturally jumped back in reaction, apologizing, sorry I didn't mean to scared you, at all, hands in front of him, defensively, palms facing towards the person in question. That he was apologizing to in the first place, I simply rolled my eyes, telling him off, not to do that, don't do that, bounce his upper body to side in playful response, I knew I was in for a long haul of sorts, as my friend just keep exploring the place, awing about the place, getting the ick fast from this guy standing around, precedenting him guiding us along the household, that he'd owned. Using oddball, vernacular that's super complex, toning him out, he'd eventually guided us back to the couch where me, beside my friend, as he'd sat cross-legged, swishing around wine in a wine glass, smirking then sipping while turning his head to the TV, next turning the TV show, on the remote, popping on screen we'd watched for good little well a TV show, the TV show was about houses being shown off, after being redesigned into different types of style, mail ordered by those wanting a redesign for their houses, asking a favor or a joke depending on how he takes my words, do you know, who'll be willing enough to redesign my house? About to scoff, by the open, closed, goldfish flap of his lips, then he turned his head over to me, simply asking, do you know how'll you get the money? Redesigning damnation. Joking back, yeah I'm basically rich, I screwed back with him, my friend, oh, to that, turning his head to the window where we walked, next to thought the door, going through the doorway, using his scoff, space between, I stated, just like everyone, I'm the working woman, causing him to shoot back, yeah, so, sipping on his wine, next signing well lifting up both, fingers lifted upwards, pointing to the ceiling, in a containment of control anger of sort, he'd scoffed, but do you got the, slowly slipping on his wine, well considering to continue, but doing so anyway, well away at drinking his wine, but what about the money, tilting my head to the side well, retorting right back, yeah what about the money, oh wait. I do have money. Scoffing an answer at me, of yeah, you should, raising his glass up, well crossing his arms over his raised arm, hand on left arm bicep, stating a listing off of couple of names, Hydra, Lilix, Scarlet, scoffing as I opened up my lips, in response, by disclosing the fact of, last time was Hydra, I'd scratched my head, then palming the side of my face, well leaning forwards, towards him, well rolling my eyes, asking, who's Scarlet, he'd added in mockery, the best, about to expect to be given little information, I'd near rolled my eyes all the way, when he'd utter out loud, for personal restyling, including restoring furniture, items, objects, to even places, being restored right back to the past. Mumbling to myself, thinking deeply about that company in this conversation, I ease into, ambiguously, joke back, what about my house, with huge insurance, unshielded, never shared, shaking, controlled I think to myself, conformed, confidence, retorting right back to me, in normal but still, oozing with a lot of content, confidence, confused for just a moment, waiting for a response, but only for normal amount of time, given to me, in every conversation, I've have since I was born, he'd. Retorting right back to me, ending up stating afterwards, angrily, as I've been beaten in the game, I was playing in the interview, integrity, intelligence game, to overview what I might have with him, in a relationship, in the future, frustrated. Okay fine, I'll take your selective, subjection, quietly giggling to himself at my reaction, causing me blush, loosen up a bit, frustrated no longer there, I could tell, I could get used to this man quickly, or what he was impressing to me, right now, at this moment, in time, as I sit here on his couch, seeing his face, making conversation to each other, friend just making comments occasionally, "Aw, you should already be together," I thinking about the time, check out the time, present on my phone, after clicking the button on my phone, I thought to myself, dang, I committed to communicating with him, that, I need to go now, commenting back, ho, taking a sip from his wine glass, the final sip of course, almost, convenient. My friend stated, groceries? Nature's ways to put away things in cabinets regardless, of if they belong, in said cabinets. I completely, committed, commenting back of, yeah, stating a date, as I opened up the door, being already halfway through, as I went to porch stairs, I noticed, nodding back with a huge, toothy, grimace smile, shooting a look though, every window, before finally, closing the door, going onward after stepping down the stairs, getting to the porch, strolling over to my car, seeing birds in my distance, near outside my vision, as I wasn't paying much, at all attention to these birds, who swooped down and began pecking at my head and then body including in the incident, to my friend too, who'd reasonably jump, right inside the car, crushing a bird, nearly as she'd rushed to hop, right inside at that moment. When the assembly of assistant by other birds eventually pecking at us too, all jumbled in their community, commutation to peck at us, and I didn't know why, or even how D managed to cause these animals to be the way they are right now, as they make their attacks, when I was just about hop into the car, my hope was dash, as a bunch of hawks grabbed with their sharpened beaks to crushed bone, grabbed both legs, claws including, to near air lifted me out of the car, that's when I heard bunch of breaks in bones, a wooden bat, nearly breaking from crashing, thrashing, thresher of whipping around the bat, at birds, who flew away, afterwards, but still from a distance, waited on trees, for him to go away, to begin their assuming. Assault from early, I immediately assumed breeding season, but when I looked at the birds, racing against the devil. After standing upright, from being flat, on my stomach, trying not to protect my insides gathering my bearings, getting a hand to stand up straight, I got a distance, pretend expression of sympathy, from him, who'd come back out, to beat the birds away from me, grabbing the bat in first place to protect me, gasping, about to hyperventilating, I pale face, nearly about to puke, but still trying to stay calm, but careful with my words, about to give words to what I want to said, my friend smartly volunteered to vouch for me by stating also nearly out of breath too, she didn't do anything to those birds, crossing his arms, I blurted out to a reactionary repetition of what my friend stated to him, retorting right back to us. A simple answer of, fine, turning halfway, he'd paused thinking heavy, signing, turning his head to me, listing off the same date, and times again. Next, asking that'll be fine right? Blurting out, still in shock a bit, yes, scratching my head, well turning my head to my car door, side, I'd near repeating the same answer, of, yes as long as you're, still comfortable, smirk well tilting his head, crossing his arms, as I looked at the birds, analyzing each bird species in the attack on both me and my friend, bodies, waving at me, I stopped as he'd, retorted, well I hope you don't have the same, gesturing at the birds, by waving his arms on, over to the birds, well stating, "Else I'll think you're of course cursed," recrossing his arms and then tilting his head to the other side, as he fully now faced me, with his body, now fully turned all the way around, to strolled onto the porch, next step up the stairs. Grabbing the knob to, said door, then turning to me, halfway also, downwards too, twisted, to look at me, in my car now. Waving at me, a goodbye, then pressing his 2 fingers to his lips, then shooting out his hand at me, as to shot, a kiss at me, blushing again to myself, lucky this time, hearing sharp, shrieking from the birds in the trees, looming over us, as we went along our day, in routine almost, hopefully a routine, hopefully he'll agree with me, to begin dating him, not him, and just marrying out of convenience as the government says we should, as he's my representative, replacement husband for now. If he doesn't again agree, I can always marry another man in mind, if I have a man in my mind, at the time of this marriage to divorce. Great, I thought to myself as he'd, when inside his house, finally, again, my friend asked, "Are you okay?" Crossing her arms, placing her elbow, pointing into her crossed over right legs, over foot on ground, set on car, cushion, normally, left legs. A friend for a coin. Face full of concern of course, making twisted my back on, over to her, my head facing her, as I turned over to her, my face naturally twisted to eyebrows raised, scrunched nose, lips pushed to side, lowered eyes, next my eyebrows lower, pushing against my eyes, in rage of sorts, silence, I didn't need to state, any words ever, though that ride, drop off eventually, and then the quiet, fast ride home, back to my husband, after getting to the store, to get groceries, birds chasing me as run. Inside, baffled at their rage, towards me out of all, people in this world, right now, existing, going along life more annoyingly, attacking birds and their very much lived, experiencings though this world, right now, rushing back to car. Car door flying open, then closed, peeling out of there, peeking out both car mirrors, next windows to see if I'd crushed or even injured any birds. Yet, no, good. I thought to myself now, as I wheeled along the pathway home from store, getting out of the parking lot, for the store for cars to park there, to the roads back home, getting there, ready for a fight, irritate, rage to spread though the environment as aroma, wrapped around me, as I'm his supposed wife. Great, I thought to myself, hasting to get inside, rolling my eyes, I thought to myself, he'll definitely hate me, when I tell him ultimately, ripping the door near out of the doors, of the doorway, growing discomfort in my gut, I thought he'd grab me to drag me, right inside, but no, just cartoonish crying, like a child being told no for the first time, sighing, then trudging right inside, he'd scream a simple, one-word answer. He'd probably been preparing, since D left for the cafe. Who? The devil I created. I walked away from the screaming match starting, to the kitchen, in order to preparing dinner, by grabbing crockery, preparing water, boiling the water, as he gave up, sitting down on the kitchen, chair surrounded by other chairs, in the middle was the chitin table, which he'd set up, in first place starting his own April, down to, divorce, I bet, to glare at me, with a massive grudge forming in his brain, as I went along not talking to him, at all, even when I sat down, the plates at the dining table, he'd gesture at me, by waving his hand in my face, asking who, I responded with silence, by grabbing my fork, and digging, right into the food, I'd prepare to eat, with him of course, as he is my husband and did the food, for dinner. Last night, turning his head away from, beginning to play with a strand of his hair, I simply just gazed at him, with he'd taken as, a glared or threat, nearly flipping his plate at me, well shooting his legs flat onto the flooring, shooting straight up well, again flying his arms from one side of my face to other, in front of me, to catch my attention, screaming even louder than last time, oh I. Tears falling from his eyes, down to his cheeks, then onto the flooring plus table, thinking to myself, great, I'll have to clean that up, sighing well, palming my face, eyebrows twitching, as I palmed my face for a bit, just standing there straight for a good while, nearly reacting to me, tilting my head upwards a bit, nose pointing to the picture on the wall, not giving him a response back, shirking I'm not a child, crossing arms well continuing, anymore, next tilting his head the same as Me, but even higher then, laughing, well I thought to myself, he thinks this is a game, slamming his hands onto the table, well screaming directly into my face, well also be bended over table, to screamed at me, he dashed out of the room. Rushing over to his room, slamming the door, and jumping onto his bed to shout into a pillow all he'd had to say to me. Going in a routine in a snowstorm, outside. Noticing the table had moved from jump to dashed away I simply just adjusted the table a bit, soon later eating my food, getting up by placing both feet onto the ground, ambling over to sink cleaning up the dishes left in said sink, gathering then into dishwasher, gathering rest into cabinets finally, ensuing a necessary stretching, finally I yawn as now the sun was setting, I consequently went on over to the couch, plopping right down on a cushion, grabbed the remote, pressed a few buttons, flicked though a few shows, picked one, subsequent I watched the show, content, calm, semi-happy, being there on the couch for a while, a time being, when my bedtime happened to come by, knocking, I got up again ensuing a stretching again. Later afterwards, stretching I'd saunter into my guest bedroom, folding outwards, then rolling down the blankets. After folding the blankets to, sit down, getting up, rushing over in excitement for a bit, readying myself for an organized out with an outfit to wear, an idea for tomorrow, so I could dress for tomorrow, back to back flipping opened, then folding back into the pile, succeeding at my goal, I'd in proximity to my bed, well being tired, ended up getting into my bed, going sitting down, to pushing myself outwards, sliding my head on my pillow, arms going outside my beds, blankets, grabbing my phone's changer, phone now laying changer, connected to the phone now at change, I rolled, from my side, to my front, rolling my blankets to my shoulders. Rolling to my side again, to gain comfort again, crossing arms, under the blankets, so my limbs didn't go numb, well I sleep, closing my eyes, drifting off to sleep, in slumber I woke up from the alarm I set on my phone from couple nights ago, picking up my head from the pillow in dreary eyes, state, daz a bit, I stopped my alarm, on phone by pushing up the button, to stop the alarm in question, so I could get up for the day. Chapter 5, Misery Loves Company. Teeth that are rotten to the very core. Getting up nimbly, rushing onward, over to the shower getting me a simple, cheery, hello, from my new husband, who I plan to keep as roomies with in the long haul, be thrown away, lover mark, scratching away, dirt, soaping myself up, to be clean, then risening, almost forgot the conditioner which I put into my hair, washing off all cleaning material, to be clean, soon later I'd, dried up, rapidly, quickly as lighting dressing, doing my makeup to standard, with an extra flair, to impress him. Rushing out of my room, overhearing the TV noise, of TV show, playing out on screen as I presume, my new husband, watches the show, guessing this as I accelerated to my car, expecting to be stopped in between the door. Shock flicked across his face, almost like light bulb moment, went off, giving him only a second glance back, that possibly was super distance, not wanting to say any words to him, as I have nothing to said, to him, as excitedly, he now knows, but also horror at him now accepting, yelled at the door, to wave also, goodbye, running out my car. Teeth that managed to rattle, like a rattle. Opening up the car door, sliding inside, sitting on the cushion, chair of the car, actively closing the car door, as if he'd been electrocuted by lighting he'd gotten by time I was already getting inside my car, rushing over about grabbed my car door handle, in shock a bit still, paste on his face was horror, pulling out my car before could grab the car handle, making him trip as he'd lunge at my car, peeling away, seeing at the last min, in my car mirror my neighbor, just glaring at me. With a cup of tea, she was sipping at that moment, seeing make me think about having regret, but I went back to just driving, then being excited to see him, somebody that I might begin to appreciate more often than him, my new husband. An annoying incompetent, incompetent, shellfish shell of a man, who should already know, from my previous responses. Requesting to be alone, mostly but also being okay with him, just being a roommate, going along the pathway, I remember to then plugging in the pathways to the address, because if I'm still going to go to his house every weekend or as far as I'm unemployed, I thought to myself, I should apply to jobs soon, if a week passed and I'm still without a job, because of the building being on fire previously, being of course put out, but still very much damaged, to a degree, so a week of repairs is required for the building. A part of me wants to just quit, because of my previous lives, child that I had, before the admission of truth about my husband, rage I still sense within my own gut, but now I barely think about that. Not because I found control over my own feelings, but because of every new aspect change of my life, that has probably permanently from government laws. A morning introduction to an afternoon. That's when I found house he lives within for now, texting him from the morning, including last night, when I got the idea in my head. I checked my texts from both last night, and this morning time, thumbs up, I got in the form of a picture, checkmark, excited I shaked, with a squeal of sorts, popping the door open, formerly gazing at windows, getting a walk over to window, when I gaze into the window, in appreciate, satisfactory, anticipation, was in occupation in my gut, breathing a sigh of relief from, not being another whore, in his personal situation, arsenal, and waved back, an unlocking of the door, then and waving outside, peeking out the car door after, getting a few pecks from birds gliding down in huge sweep downwards to peck at my head, mocking me, by chortling at me, you're still being pecked by, flicking his right hand, upwards, in a throne. That ending in his back of hand facing me, fingers raised, stretch out, throwing a rock at one of the birds, swooping down at that moment, nearby my head, to pecking at me, getting a rock thrown, on top of the bird's head, causing a crack sound, alongside an utter shocked shriek of sorts, super animalistic, as expected from such enraged birds, origins unknown to me, about to rush inside. I saw the pictured showing of a straight of a horror movie scene, all the birds swooping down from the trees, rushing at with attention to detail, attacks. This happened all at once, quickly throwing myself inside his house, expecting the door to shut on me, because I imagine both husbands would do that instinctively, including my experience. Especially expecting from him, so expecting a nimbly shutting the door on me, but no, he'd opened up the door hugely ajar. To that afternoon, getting us to both to fall on each other, all awkwardly, scramming to fully close the door, hearing the scratching, stressing the door ajar, by bits of space, putting with all my strength to full, finally, finished closing the door, about to get up, I gave him a hand, to get up, about to argue with him, before rolling his eyes, halfway, consequently grabbing my hand, covering his face, with his other hand, getting his footing. He'd stood up much higher than me, eventually as he got up, I could tell he was blushing, putting his hand down defensive, but definitely, defeat as he knows. I knew he was blushing, so he'd given up on the act, asking moreover as he'd put his hand down, do you want coffee? About to scoff a yes. As I just got there, I heard a ring from a doorbell, them paper being placed down on the porch, not even brother. I was to roll my eyes, when going over to the door at that moment he'd opened the door, seeing the paper, taking a glacé though, that had been placed down, on the porch. When he'd grabbed the paper, noticeable not seeing anyone else I think, he'll throw a rock at them, he'd handle the paper into my hand. I scoffed Jehovah's Witnesses, great, I thought to myself, crossing his arms, looking smug. At my reaction, I rolled my eyes again, scoffing but also sighing. We went over to his kitchen, me first, preparing the coffee. I got into an argument over tilting with him, that went leaning over I bump into, kissing him on the lips, accidentally. The accident hurt like two sets of teeth and thin skin being pressured together with huge amounts of snapback strength, to jaws being slammed together, so this, my nose began to bleeding rushing, right up, onto my own 2 feet. Shocked, I went to run over to the bathroom, slamming the door, grabbing tissues of the toilet topper, I squeezed my nose, keeping my nose, incidentally to my head, stable state, as well as level-headed. Desperation for sheep's wool. Ripping the door open, as he'd waited probably for the toilet lid to be lifted, only to heard the tissues being instinctively pulled out of the very box, the box with the tissues, about to, really red in the face. Seeing my tears he just turned around, well scratching his head, mumbling almost, but still clear here from my ears, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Rushing over wrapping my arms around his waist, I angrily remark on the situation, that if he'd kissed, I might as well just go. On another date with him, laughing, he'd respond simply, "Sure, let's get the candles out." After a pause, in between said words, so I went to the kitchen, he'd grabbed the candles and we talked over TV, about our lives, our problem. Next our childhood, our traumas, I even hug him, dispute how awkwardness, plus his near avoidance but still telling the truth every time, without fail, my faith got moreover huge with every truth state. When we were done, we were already on the 5th date, already, when done talking to each other, so hugging him. Pretending is imagination, on a greater scale. Even tighter than before, giving him puppy dog eyes, he'd again put his hand on his face, scoffing a yes to me, so getting up, I asked him what he'd want for dinner, chortling at me, with an instinctive expression of, "Just mac and cheese," turning his head to the window away from me who stood, body not facing, but head turned over to him. He'd automatically related, or Romanov, turning his head halfway back to me, still facing him with my head turned to him, body facing away from him. Hand on wall, leaning a bit away from the wall, not about to fall at all, but I can tell he's a bit worried still, in the vault of his mind, as he'd talk further, by without a pause, "You don't know how to cook mac and cheese." Blinking at him twice, in loving way, which he just laughed at, causing me to blush, scoffing a yes, relating again, as I lifted my hand. A first choice mistake. From the wall, putting both hands to my sides, well hobble away, blushing still a bit, ending up grabbing the crockery I made ramen, still, as that seems like a first date meal, of sorts, despite how messy, unless if you use chopsticks for eating your ramen, then the meal is no longer messy, looking into his drawers for chopsticks, not seeing any, unless you consider the plastic kind, still chopsticks, even though they're not permitted, as you'll end up throwing said chopsticks away when done eating with your food. So still grabbing both parts, I sat down on the couch, with both bowls, handing over the chopsticks to him, who also went to grab them, making us holded hands, not shocked at this point. I just smirked and rolled my eyes, well recount what he'd stated, in mumbling almost, of "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to," chortling back, well giggling the whole time as he'd, "Yeah I am," voicing out, even our relationship, as I went to hug, which he'd allow despite the bowls of ramen on the couch, grabbing the remote, to stroll though the apps on the TV, in order to pick up a TV show to watch, for the both of us, going over to pick up the bowl of ramen, well glancing at me, giving me a smirk, as a thank you, next attempting to be appearing to tried and applied, himself applying, I gesture at him, on how to hold chopsticks, handing over his hands. I noticed this and began helping him, which he did suitable, automatically, audibly, this time, thank you, this time, giggles twice, wrapping noodles around my chopsticks, and slurping up the noodles, cleanly without a mess, quickly, realizing the mess he may make. Eventually, in my relief, got up to go over to the kitchen, clearly ripped off the roll paper towels, next stepping over to analyze the couch, in order to whip up any mess left on the couch so he doesn't end up in a puddle of cold or overheated ramen broth beside noodles. Also in my relief, he'd found no such droplets on the couch, sitting down again, digging into his food again, turning my head away from him, as that's how fast I've eaten my ramen, putting my feet from the couch to the flooring, pushing myself out a bit, well putting my back on the couch again, seeing how the show will play out in each scene. Once he was done, gathering up both bowls, being arranged in the location of the sink, being set there, automatically by him, inaudible sound off, way of action, that he'd inactive to keep the fancy bowls still intact instead of throwing them in like plastic, like how he'd done before with the wine, which I thought to myself, I guess you can't tell which is which, when crockery is very much fancy, uttering out to him without thinking that much into the answer. Formats for paper flowers, for eventually real flowers. Because I very much wanted to know, does appearance matter to you, or do you appreciation difference, even ugliness? I heard AA retorted of yeah, I don't care what you look like, well walking around the couch, eventually sit down well stating what he'd had to state, yeah I don't care what you look like, because we all get old, eventually, or are alright ugly, He'd pointed at himself. After saying ugly, I chuckled, no, no, leaning over to him, grabbing his shoulders, while snorting. You're average, snickering back, yeah, I guess, sighing, well rolling his eyes, then continuing, I'm average, asking in respect, and available, I'd filter by near flirty whisper, inside his ears, lips nearly pressed to his ear. Sighing a lovely sigh, he'd got off the couch, stretching out his hand, as to give me an opportunity to grab his hand to get off the couch. Neon sign blanching. Sighing another sigh in living way, I grasped his hand, getting off the couch, setting my 2 feet onto the ground. Being later guided, after giving him a regular, normal, kiss, going later to his bedroom, I quickly realized, I was on my period that day. Briskly blushing, I ended up, uttering this out, to him in his ear, by a whisper, I'm on my time of the month. Whisper back, you have a way, thinking I remembered that cup in my bag, I near forgot, so following what I remember, from last time, probably years ago, with my husband, so I ended up, going over to the living room, couch, fishing out the cup of sort, following back to his room, remembering the pathway I want to before, nearly getting lost, by taking a wrong way. As his house was just that old, and confusing, seeing him all right there, under the blankets, I blushed heavily, regathering myself. Seeing him now pointing to the bathroom, I tiptoe onward, over to there, getting inside the room, closing the door, locking the door, automatically on instinct, doing what I had to do, sticking the cup where the sun don't shine, strolling over after, unlocking the door, to the bed, hopping onto the bed, in his bedroom, we ended up, doing what we thought we wanted to do, instead of decent experience, he was like a soggy piece of bread, we rolled around like 2 loaves, drying out quickly. More briskly than any experience especially, beforehand, so we just got up from each other, laying on his awkwardly I realize, in panic my cup was got from body, expecting a full Bloody Mary, bed, I realized that wasn't the case, my period ended. I guess, so I looking over to him, I rolled down the sheets, realizing that's where my period cup, went, about to ask, he'd grabbed off, with a popping sound, being heard by both of us, both acknowledging what happened, so sticking in, back again, just in case. I rolled over off the bed, his bed, standing upright again, brushing my strand of hair behind my ear, wondering if I was just looking in past, to see if I want to have another relationships with other men, as I near waste my life by predicting to my dismay by the dismissal of my stepfather's last conversation with me in the past, as I went to look at houses, staying at my ex-husband house, where he'd stay with his single mom, because I want my child back, I wanted my future as past is. No, but past is unknown about to cry tears, I made an excuse as his eyes went wide in shock, I left my stove on, rushing out of the room while uttering out, I have to go, near closing the door as I continue with the rest, I'll text you later. Closing the door with a slam, not bothering to rush over to me, which I thought was a good idea. So I clothed myself in the other bedroom, after grabbing my clothes, after, he'd gathered my clothes in his master bathroom, where I end up in windowless dual halfway, trudging right inside the other bathroom, on a light flow, I put a pad in my underwear, which after clothing myself, I went over, out from the hallway to the living room, getting my bag, seeing him on the couch, he'd ask simply, you okay, I near mumbling, voiced, yeah, the problem is not you, the problem is me, I utter out loud, well closing my eyes thinking about the past at that moment, seeing me do this, he'd asked again, what's the reason, gesturing at me, then crossing his arms, and tilting his head to the side, all while stating that question. Nearly my voice cracked, as I'd voiced again, I thinking about the past, what I want, vs, what I wanted, replying to that in clear not eventually, pecking, Evibus respond of, well you still want another date. Conformation of sheep. Tilting his head to the other side, palming the side of his face, well being under the chin, when resting his hand on his face, growing more lax, calm, confidence, in our relationship, if I'm really that comfort telling him this, after all these played actions, I'd play out in my brain, remembering that he'd got up, went over to the door, grabbing the knob, twisting the knob, opening the door, up, keeping the door open as goodwill gesture of sorts, smiling at me with an attitude, adjusting, from Pure joy, toothy smile, closing the door, right behind me, after giving me a wave, as I rushed on over, to my car, trying to skipping the part of pecking of the birds or attempt. Chapter 6, a little attitude adjustment, could be in order soon, just you wait. A little readin' birdie. Swooping down to get me, from the trees, they waited on, in the first place. By the time I got into the car, I just barely got pecked twice on my leg, near closing the car door, on the birds swooping down bodies and heads, with again a crow, they went up then into air with a sound, flying backwards, to get back into the trees perching, right down on branches, crowing again, at me as I peeled away seeing, the more stronger birds, pecked at the cars, wheeling away, nimbly as a rabbit, can be with hawks following close by, ending up on the pathways home, birds again flying in the great distance, flying again away eventually, by giving up again, but they be back at his house, but I know other birds will be, on my tail. Traveling towards with attention to detail, attacks like always, but this time like before, I'll be prepared likewise always from here on out, from the first time, with my friend. Finding my way home likewise always, halfway alright, but totally okay or understanding my feelings, in any situation, seriously, since already hearing the begging from him, wheeling up to the typical last left, driveway, in the same spot I already, on, like always, popping open the car door, ambling in appearance from my still outside neighbor, who still shot me a glare, when I wheeled up, all the way to the door opened by my new husband, lowering both my eyes in slight anger, hearing him, thinking he was somewhat in pair, because why? As long as you're happy and healthy. You want dinner, now, checking the time midnight I'd scoffed no, stating ho okay, turning away from the door, walking away halfway, turning his head to me after that pause, I knew where this conversation was going from start to finish, uttering out, cheater, to me, next swishing his head away from me, rushing in a clear potting out back his room, tears falling to the ground as he'd moved away, irritated as all heck, grossed at his useless statement, I rolled my eyes, halfway. Pausing in a realization to close the door all the way closed, ambling to the hall, then I'd trudge though expecting an axe to fly into my head, like that one murder mystery, of arranged married by government, femicide, men blaming women for not getting the right one, they wanted, thinking the government always, has the right idea, till the realization happens. Ending up again in my guest bedroom, not wanting tomorrow to get my room back, so I just stopped by this room, till now, not that I wanted to move stuff, with or rearranged rooms, yet or ever, even, texting on my phone he'd had the next after tomorrow opened, a free time, which I sure will enjoy, at least he isn't clingy, he is cool a bit but still, choose to walk away from what he wants obviously, but almost, but at least he's changed in the sense of being able to say yes, when asked. Directly, when asked has stated, questions, asked, by the person he loves most, since college, when he was mean to everybody but mean, which was baffling and super, much it turned off, to me at the time, when I wanted standards for myself. But now what cheater, has standards, I know they don't, so now I'm stuck, right now, or guess I'm not a cheater, as he knows, but that was just a guessmation of the past, of how I would go there after seeing him, but not recognizing yet. As long as your property. Till he told me recently, as of lately, still I have a sore spot not to do, what I've done recently, as I know how, the tight chest feeling, gut being off, to the point of nausea, flu symptoms even, the internet being a little distant, distraction, to your eventually pecking evivist, feeling towards that, one person, who you is up to some action against your marriage, but here I am voicing this out indeed, inside my own head, for him to hear, I secretly hope, he's no longer interested in being involved in my own head, right now, but I can hear scoffing in the distance, maybe I'm going over or close to checking out of the office, soon when my own mind falls down, from grace, soon, sounds good, I heard from afar. Giving clarity to my own mind and clarity to my hearing, scheduling scoffing right back. Irritated to all heck, well inside of the guest's bathroom, so turning on the water in the shower. Love bites. Which began to spray down upon the tub, hoping inside after declothing myself again, for another shower, soaping myself up, next rinsing off without a second though, then after doing all the steps afterwards, to clean up myself, I hop outside the shower on my towel, take another off the rack bar, hanging out off the door, dried up then clothed myself again, in pajamas this time for the time of night, strolling straight out of the bathroom, going to the guest's bedroom, organizing my clothes again, for tomorrow, texting him again for tomorrow, flopping onto my bed still holding my phone in hand, when I got a beep right back, at moment checking my phone, tapping the icon, scrolling straight, as of nighttime, to that text. Expecting a break remembering I was gazing into our relationship beforehand, when inside the bathroom standing upright, next sitting down on the toilet, lid still down. Cupping the sides of face in my hands, well in deeper, than usual, thinking about every aspect of our relationship, how trauma has to do with this, our relationship, I texted back, I was fine, I be fine, pausing for a second to remembered, I thought again, to remind myself of my own precious though off decision, despite the memory's loss, I still remember that decision I made pretty close to checking out of the relationship, our relationship, just like that relationship, even mere days, I can't throw away a possibility of sorts, but still despite trying not to buy promises I mean to myself, I paused despite a promise, I made as one of many more to myself, I paused likewise always, again I paused, ugh, I thought to myself. Again, once again I stated that to myself, yeah, I thought again, but still I texted back oozing with love back, sincerely and trustworthy, truth to him out of all people. As he'd used to lie about his feelings towards me, but still can, throw away any opportunity, and throw up my hands, give up, my house all to him, my new husband, who I have much connection, contact, contemporary, very much appreciated to me, remembered, reminder, conversation with my friend, contempt for him, my new husband, who I just don't hate yet, but who I slightly just know by days, maybe not having freedom is why many reasons, why simply put fail, without simply seemingly any other reason, I guess humans are more cats than dogs, but that's just how the government rolls with the tissues and crying to divorces, and the end of optionally, potentially good to great relationships. Kissing bites. Waking that my morning time, waking up, to and not very serious, not shocking from my previous responses from my now previous boss, so I appreciate the opportunity now, thinking well at least I don't have to think about everybody else, giving me sad, giving looks, so when I got up on my feet plodding to the kitchen, hearing eggs being made, alongside bacon, exactly, expecting a separated meal, I was shocked, when after taking a simple glance at what he was making on the hot, steaming stove, plopping the dish down on the countertop for me to eat, so I went over to the kitchen, situating myself on the stool, waiting for him to take a bite, then I ate later, after a minute to cool, hearing an answer from my phone, my appointment appreciated by new boss, application, was approved, and I had told noon to begin working, so I quickly began to very much, scarfing down my food, so I could have a moment with the TV before work, with my shows, my new husband, I have no clue, what his appearance, based on face, experience, expression of reaction to my shows, so I have nothing but just a slight smile, like a dinosaur was next to me out of all creatures, hunting next me, acting as if I didn't like his meal, he'd went from chirpy happy, to scoffing mad, I didn't even bother to understand, the beginning of what made him mad to today, scoffing, you not going to even ask why I'm mad, arms flared outwards when he'd began his sentence, I just walked by without a second though in my head, not even bothering to give him a regular, normal to anyone else. Though inside their head, as I know he's able to read just my thoughts, right now I guess and no off, sitting down on the couch. Application to love, failed. Sighing but no thinking thoughts of any kind, or point just grabbing the remote, pressing the button, scrolling through the apps, to shows, clicking a show, to watched, began to watch the show, I pulled out my phone, out of my pocket, clicking throughout my phone, timing my time on the TV, putting back into my pocket after clicking off to my phone, putting back into my pocket, my phone, cupping my hand, over my legs crossed up on the couch, after being lifted upwards, onto the couch, well as I sat down, my husband stomping into the living room, scoffing, crossing his arms, after realizing I wasn't going to give him any attention, of any sort. Arms going from flare out to crossed as he turned around to rush inside the kitchen to clean, while crying to himself, about me, and my non-loving self to him, probably wondering why him. Which I heard but gave no thought or answer to at all, happy as a clam, ignoring him as I went along watching my TV show, ringer going off, on my phone. I clicked off the ringer, on my phone screen, grabbing the remote, pressing the same button, again, turning off the TV again, getting up, ready for the job. I stepped over to the door to the living room, opened the door by turning the knob on the door, getting outside, readying myself again for working in a new job, mentally exhausted, but readying to just get the money for bills from the government that pushed me into such an emergency, giving to your heart, exhausting, experience of sorts, trudging right inside the car, despite distance from the birds, hopping down from the trees. Peeling away again, to not damage further my car, getting inside the car lot to the building, not having much time to think as I rushed inside, ending up in me being face on the back of some random guy. Chapter 7, Music then drugs and rock and rolling downhill. Help the sheep have teeth. Blushing embarrassed to all heck, he turned around, asking if I'm okay, seeing as of the both of receiving nothing to at all, any judgment for recognizing each other. The boss just shocked my hand, before walking around us, to get outside the building, black coffee in coffee cup, mug sipping on said coffee mug, as he went along to his car, driving away. Noticing this I asked simply, well lol, looking down, cupping my hands together, before scratching the side of my head, then playing with one of the many stands of hair on my head, are you the boss, crossing his arms well looking above me, well stating clearly, yes, then patting my head twice, before walking off nearly. Then gesturing me over to an employee that throughout that daytime, teached me how to do my job. Then I got called into the boss's office. Expecting a lashing out of sorts or even crazy, crash out of sorts, I saw him not the guy from before previous, blushing a bit, from what I did previous, I saw two people in the room right in front of him, that looked nearly identical to him. I quickly recognized that those two people were his parents, still kicking around of sorts, as I heard my stepdad is dead from drug usage, which I'd already consider he'd do, but hearing he'd also had cancer, was not shocking either, by any way, I expected him to die from nearly any deadly thing, or objective sort or any aspect of life. In all fairness, he'd left this whole goddamn world leaving nothing untied in your standing upright again, just leaving the house of the world a mess of sorts. I just done thinking about him, anymore, he'll probably come up again sometime soon anyhow, some way, somehow. He's a racking ball of a kind, I've never understood or apologized to understand, because I've been always gotten beaten into cleaning up his messages for messes, now beginning to stare at me, wondering why I'm here. I'd gone told for by him, the one at the very edge of the room, behind the desk, that she's my wife. Cheering in response, the father of the family reunion, stated, I'm so happy for you. The mother turned around to find me in room, as I trudged, silence as worms, as to not trigger anyone further, than I have to be at all, when talking to the boss in question, enraged by some action I did, thinking about how this wouldn't be against him, or action with enraging him any further by doing. I guess I'm a natural overthinker of sorts, the mother-in-law now, I guess, rage filling my chest, but staying peaceful. They really do. I swear on my life, wait. I'll just have to keep acting till we break up eventually in due time, that is of course when I don't know, merely I step forward to all of the people in this inn on a lied, bowed, which caused him to blush in scoffing rage of sorts. The mother-in-law, palming her face, mumbled, you don't have to do that, as the father-in-law, near closing his case right there, raising both hands up, in anticipation of already stating, you don't have to do that, as a reference to the same thinking as her. I was utterly shocked. Is that some aspect of long, loving relationship, that I've never seen or heard? Then I remembered hearing nurse said, she had such a relationship with her husband, until he cheated on her, causing a divorce of sorts. Thinking about this now, my face, which was always, update to the time, staying straight, peaceful, almost in love, I saw him give a cold, arctic chill, glance in my general direction. When his parents weren't looking directly at him, though his mother saw such a glance, and made a giant assumption that we're just not on the right footing still, or even nearby the ocean, as she'd uttered out of her mouth, I guess you don't want to be alone, yet, huh, uttering straight back, nearly yelling, no mom, I love her, crossing his arms while holding his ground, glaring at her, causing her to scoff loudly, so loud, I thought of how I've never heard such a loud scoff before. or anywhere, to now here, especially from such an old lady, at least in her 80s, still healthy looking though, in such enriched clothes, that just looked expensive, even down to how she'd acted from right now, as he'd grudged. That's why we're together, in a super low tone, just audibly for me to sort of heard, I guess he's a really good actor. Wondering why he's doing this to me, getting ready to go, getting up quickly, as nimbly as a shuttling out of there could be, the two couple got up and nearly pushed me out of the way, the older lady stated, "Oh my," nearly closing the door, before stating the rest, not at all mocking me, well, looking me up and down for a something I didn't know of. Did she know some aspect of him, my other partner, I didn't know of yet? Sorry. The door then slammed shut. I turned around about to ask about the other partner act, but he'd just waved at me to go back to work, so I did, realizing he'd gotten worse in some way, like treating as an object to still develop into a different kind of relationship with. Not at all a healthy relationship either way. I'm out of this job within the week I've given to the other boss, not stating any reason, of course. A place where good intentions don't matter. Yet maybe when I really get pushed for answers, I'll just give the truth. Anyhow, my phone keep ringing till I discovered on my phone a plan to pick me up. This coming from out of nowhere shocked me, so after work, I trudged outside, seeing him in a cab, waving my keys mockingly at me. I was utterly surprised, shocked, horrific. My stomach began to curdle. I thought I was going to throw up, when I got asked, in blunt, slightly angered tone, red-faced when curling over a bit, people, shimmering behind me in second-hand embarrassment, were many people, but they don't the situation back home, they don't know what's going on, that I have to go through every day now, since he's show up to my house. I marched right on over to there, red face too. His face went pale. The driver was about to drive away, when he'd scream, "Stop." Stopping in shock, I was able to open up the door to other side of the cab, facing him directly. Now, I stated, I wanted back home, to the driver, whose face was super pale now, scoffing back while also munching on his tongue from fear of, "Yes, fine, madam," stuttering though the entire sentence while nearly crying with fear of it. Driving, he pulled out of his pocket a huge wad of cash, whispering into the driver ear, a little some saying before, plopping back onto his side of the seat. Giving a sharp look, he'd stated he'd be drop off first, then me. I scoffed but turned around my head, to glance out the window for a moment, then turned my head around to judge him and his expressions, smiling, well, looking super animalistically relaxed. I knew I was screwed. How was going to pay the driver more to bring me back home? I couldn't, I reluctantly decided. Teeth marks on the wrong person. I've already treated this man like trash already and wouldn't give him such a hard time, pushing me out of the car, then calling the rest of the driver to not pick me up at all, till a certain date of time, asking simply at my new husband a question of, "Did you pack me at least one bag?" Scrunching up his face in such rage, that I began to shake a bit. The driver didn't notice, or just thought we were both as equally abusive towards each other, that he didn't stop on the road to say anything, or address the situation at all. That's when I saw him respond by restraining his face, by restructuring his face, going back to a playful smile, sticking out his tongue in mockery. He'd grabbed my shoulder, playful. I yippee back in response to this, thinking he'll hurt me. The driver then asked, turning his mirror towards, but essentially me, "Are you okay? A little readin' birdie told me something yesterday." Remarking on, "Can I just go home?" Slight silence as the man began humming unconsciously to himself, turning back the mirror himself, the driver. I thought to myself, I'm screwed. Turning to me dead-eyed, "No you're not." Yet, he'd crossed his arms, in such a rager. I thought back to my abusive dad. I thought I never get inside such a hell again, like ever, but now I'm here and know now where I've went back to again. I stay still slightly in shock silence, but I knew I didn't have that much cortisol in my system to have me completely racked from that guy, because of the other man I've been talking to who'd made me pretend to be his family, asking simply in response to my thinking, "Who's the other man that made you play house with him?" I remarked, shriveling up inside my own guts. I gnashed my teeth near shut, well, stating, "His name is..." I paused as he began holding my hand, looking completely, utterly unhinged and crazed, on the verge of a complete crash out. Guessed what I didn't get today? I get later on, I thought to myself again after seeing the cab in the first place, rubbing my hand. He tilted his head to side, still looking like he was about to crack under some sort of pressure, asking this time not if I'm okay but repeating what he'd had to stated before. I then fully stated his name, this time giving up all possibility of seeing this guy again, after realizing I didn't want any recent results of an appointment, dates, relationship with that guy, so I felt instantly relief when I replied with his name is Carlin. I sighed automatically afterwards. Relief was only temporary as he'd just afterwards. What do we said, I halfway through on ending half, as though the only reason I'm doing this in order not to upgrade the system of fighting among ourselves into deadly force, but if he beats me, then I have to go to the hospital soon afterwards anyhow, right? Chapter 8, A Diet from You. Happy clams, sad calms. I'm very sorry, I crossing my arms, near rolling my eyes, squishy my hand tight, screaming, what's that attitude, ripping my hand away in response, quickly adjusting my hand in front of my face, to assess the damage caused to my hand. I knew from the redness on my hand, I was going to bruise. Quickly, I glared at him, well that moment, in this point in time, he'd thrust himself out of the corner of his seat, lunging at me with such rage, only stopping himself halfway, well screeching. If I wasn't in this chair, I would cut off your hands. For that, he then crossed his arms turning to the window to presumably prevent hurting himself and others, but probably not when we get to wherever we are going to in the first. He'd ordered us to go to by cab, in the first place, after dropping off my car, at home hopefully, most likely at this rate, he'd likely stole off my car, letting out a definite sigh of relief for us calming enough, for him to be slightly more confident in being considerably comfortable with us leaving the car not fighting, as soon as we hop out, and him not having to grab our bags or call the cops, which are both good. I can't imagine going to jail for pissing off my husband, including most likely his parents, essentially getting also into prison for the many years for cheating on my new husband. Which I imagine he'll try to look into my phone at one point or another and get really enraged, so I'll have to give him my phone today, as I'll get the best care in hospital. When staff are less seriously stressed out of their minds already, at that point in time, checking the hospitals out, I knew when I had to show him my phone. Soon of course, looking at the time leaving on clock to wherever, I realized in relief that I had 1 minute leave on the clock still, as of yet. I gave my new husband a glacé, then quickly turned back to the window again. I turned to in the first place, after the last word stated, in a fine line to life, fight we had today, getting inside the lot. I was getting myself irritated fast, with how much anxiety was within my body at that moment, nearly hyperventilating, which I haven't done in years since I last saw my stepfather, in our last conversation. Raging at this point from being so scared, I turned to my husband telling him I need to show him something quickly, rolling his eyes, but trying to restraining from undoing his face. A dog on a harness. Staying mostly under wraps, calm, we both stepped outside, walking over to the trunk of the car. I pulled my phone up from pocket, briskly flashing the messages, in bright light to him. All I remember afterwards from that, is him balling up his fists, grabbing me by hair, and beating me all over, with punches and kicks, and the driver, peeling away faster than lighting, well also calling the cops too. I remember a man jumping in the fight, in order to fight back the guy I just didn't recognize anymore, as my new husband, just as that crazy man that gave me a forever horrifying reminder of what happened this day. I wake up from drawl of snorting, nearly choking on my own vomit, rolling briskly to my side. I hear an argument between two men, drugs. I realized I saw a phone that wasn't mine and checking the phone, as I didn't see my phone anywhere in the room. Birds of murder flocked together. That's when I saw those, gut-turning, lighting, leaving a buzz in your head, from utter shock, messages on his phone, my other partner phone of course. He'd hopefully forget my phone in my room, and wasn't listening, but I knew better than that, and stay as silent as a rat at night, with night guests in the same room, as the rat hole in the wall, making sleeping sounds too to trick him of course. Reading up into them, I saw the texts between my new husband and other partner, texts of certified objectification, incel argument, even murder plans to intense attempts. I was as all heck, very happy to see these messages, else I wouldn't have known any better with the other. I could tell the argument got heat, and he dropped to the flooring knocked out for good. I think either one of them, was out cold. I then saw to my horrible anxiety. Gaping misery of the man from the argument who looked ultra disgusting, with an even more disgusting facial expression on his face, disgusted he'd went to beat me up. I jumped off the bed, landing on my feet, breaking one my probably previous broken bones, limping away actively in such rapid pace, but still did I limp, brushing near death so many, hair being grabbing then I'd throw a punch behind me, be let off the hair, so and so forth, as I accelerated to gain distance, staggering a bit. Afterwards, having him near jump on, to throwing more punches every time, the druggy man landing a couple kicks on my body, each time, but amount of misery was stopping me from surviving this nightmare. I've gone through similar, so that's probably why I was able to get outside door, cross the street just in time for a literal horde of cars to start barreling down the street. Happy murders the newspapers. Similar to a zombie apocalypse movie, no speed limit, no alleys or lanes, just anarchy incarnate. I crossed more streets hearing him in the distance still on the stairs to browned, yellowed, dusty. I didn't even recognize the house. I thought looking back seeing him shaking his fist in the air, yelling, "Go cry to your mother, your boyfriend's dead, I killed him." Hearing his druggy voice, nearly cracked into silence, I saw a series of people in cars glaring at him, or I thought they would be. Calling the cops, I then realized that they were just recording him for fun. That's when subsequently a lottery of health later, I got to hospital, got checked in, then out with just a bruised leg. And agreed to sign paperwork to get the permission to become a permanent widow. I realize I was lucky unlike other girls, so silent agreed with every fiber of my being. Hearing my other partner was all healed again, I decided I was going to kill him as to get back majorly at wasted time. Being in the hospital from his forceful taking of care, but being too lazy to do so, nearly cost me my life, which is way more important to anyone than any objects or items can be. Muttering out praises for death's door to open up, in a waiting room. "So now waiter, I have another refilled on my drink." Give up most non-uptight politeness he could possibly give, handing him another 100, handling said money into his hands, he began plodding back to the bar to grab me another drink, again for the 4th time again, happy as a clam. I let myself rest, sunlight beaming on my face, sunscreen still working, heated but very finely comfortable to my very much felt core of my own humanity. They never find out what happened to him, I thought to myself, knowing no one could hear. Again in my thoughts, every again, not ever. "Here's your drink, madam." Lifting up my sunglasses, I smile and briskly replied, "Here's your tip, sir." I then sat the drink of wine into the cup holder. Laying back down on the beach bed, happy than ever, every aspect of my life should be fine, forever now.